Is the USS Ohio the best battleship in the game? That was the question that was posed to me on Friday. And in response, I took out the USS Ohio live on stream into this very battle that you're about to see unfold. So some of you might have seen this already, some of you may not have. What we're going to see is excellent main battery performance from the USS Ohio. And I don't know that we are going to be able to answer, is it the best battleship in the game? There's certainly some things it's got going for it, not least of which is the main battery firepower. And I want to compare it to another ship at the tier, a ship that we are in fact going to face, and we're going to come out on top. Very much on top. You'll see that soon enough. The other ship, of course, is Yamato. And why would we compare the two vessels? Well, the Yamato and Ohio both share one very similar spec. They both have 18-inch guns. Now, the Yamato's guns are certainly bigger. They're 460 millimeters compared to the Ohio's 457. And you might not think that those 3 millimeters are that big of a difference, but they are, at least when it comes to the overmatch mechanic. And that is the reason I suspect many people would probably tell you Yamato is, in fact, the best battleship in the game. But there's a couple things with that. Overmatch is nice, of course, and Yamato's 460 millimeter guns mean it can overmatch 32 millimeters of armor plating, which is a common armor value at legendary tier. Most battleships, except for things like the GK right in front of us, have 32 millimeter plating on the bow and stern of the ship and on other places. Sometimes the upper belt armor, even the deck armor, is 32 millimeters. Yamato can simply ignore that value and go right through the 32 millimeter plating as if it doesn't exist. Ohio can't, but one thing it can do is hit extremely hard. Just ask the Stalingrad, who nearly dies to our first salvo. 50,980 damage. He's lucky it wasn't a dev strike. Now, with these guns, Yamato could overmatch Stalingrad's bow, which I think is 32 millimeters. Ohio can't. It really does need the broadside or at least a somewhat open angle to do damage. In fact, this angle that the Stalingrad is giving us, I think, is open enough because he goes down for another Citadel and the first Blood Medal. And just like that, in the span of 2 salvos, we've done 70,429 damage. That is a lot, let's just say. Now, of course, we cannot overmatch the 32 millimeter bow plating like the Yamato. What we can do is overmatch 30 millimeter plating, which as the game goes forward in time is becoming much more of a common value at the higher tiers. We had the recent introduction of the Zhao, for example, which has 30 millimeter plating along the sides. So does the Henri. The Des Moines has it on the deck. I think a lot of the cruisers, as they debut at this tier, are going to have 30 millimeter armor plating, which the Ohio can overmatch. But you see, the thing about overmatch is I think it lulls Yamatos into sort of a false sense of superiority in the way they go about playing their ships, and you can see it all the time. Yamato also has 9 guns to Ohio's 8, but Yamato's turrets are 2 triple turrets at the front, 1 triple turret at the back, whereas Ohio has 4 double turrets, 2 on the front, 2 on the back. So if you want to get all 8 guns on target, you have to get all 4 of the turrets on target, meaning you have to show a fair bit of broadside. Yamato, on the other hand, can get 6 guns on target without showing any broadside, and so what you see is Yamato's sitting mostly stationary, using only their front 2 guns and probably reversing a little bit in their spawn. That's generally how people play Yamatos, and it is ineffective for reasons I've covered in videos past. Ohio, on the other hand, if you want to get the most out of this ship, then you have to use all of the guns, which requires a little bit more knowledge of positioning and angling and knowing when and where to move your battleship. So there's that. But I think the crucial difference between the two vessels. The thing that really makes the Ohio sing in a way Yamato simply does not is that these 457 millimeter American battleship guns are, in my opinion, the best battleship guns in the game. They are shared, of course, by the likes of USS Georgia at Tier 7, another one of my very favorite battleships in the game, and of course the Vermont, which I don't think really anybody has just yet, also has 457 millimeter guns, except it's got 12 of them, and the stats between Vermont's 457s and Ohio's are a little bit different. So that's what I want to talk about next, because Ohio, and Georgia for that matter, both happen to have the hardest hitting battleship guns in the entire game. And I've gone and compared them to the likes of Yamato. Although we should note that we are using the Xarkun, New Jersey commander, which does help things out a little bit. Yamato doesn't really have access to an equivalent commander. It does have that, I think, Xarkun Yamato commander, who increases damage from the main battery somehow, but I don't think it's quite as good as Xarkun, New Jersey. In any case, the base damage for the armor piercing on Ohio's 457 millimeter guns is 15,750. Compare that to Yamato's, which at base is 14,800, and we see that already Ohio has 950 points more damage per Citadel hit than Yamato. And of course, there are commander skills you can use to buff that damage. Now, on Xarkun, New Jersey, we are not using the gyrating drill bit skill because Ohio, to begin with, isn't all that fast. And gyrating drill bits, while it does give you a 10% damage buff on your main battery, it also reduces the speed of the ship by 10%, which is not something I want to do to the Ohio. So, when it comes to modifying the damage numbers here, the only skills we've got in place from AL New Jersey are the base trait, which increases the main battery damage by 4.5% if the shells travel over 10 kilometers, and then the unique skill in the fourth row called Don't Ya Just Love It, and oh boy, don't I just ever, because it increases the main battery damage by 12.5% when you hit a citadel. So if you come around a corner and find a Yamato flat broadside and the shells go at, maybe they didn't actually travel over 10 kilometers, but they did enough to hit 3 citadels and basically kill the Yamato. We're up to 202,000 damage now. We've landed 30 shells in this game, 7 of which have been citadel hits, and this is the damage that we've done. Because we can get the Ohio's AP damage buffed by a total of 17% with the help of AL New Jersey. And if we wanted to add gyrating drill bits on there and buff it by another 10%, well, we could get all the way up to 27% damage buff, which is kind of insane, especially since there really aren't any downsides to any of these skills on Xarkun, New Jersey. You sort of just get these damage buffs for free without having to give too much up. And, well, that's a little bit crazy because, of course, a 17% damage buff to a number like 15,750 on these AP shells, that means, theoretically, if the shells travel over 10 kilometers and they also register a citadel hit, they will do a total of 18,427 damage. Now, if you wanted to add gyrating drill bits on top of that and take the 10% speed nerf, which I don't want to do, but some other people might, your mileage may vary. Not everybody's playstyle is the same. I might value speed a little bit more on my battleships because I am primarily concerned about where I'm positioning them. But in any case, if you do use gyrating drill bits, then, if you hit a citadel over 10 kilometers, your shell is going to do 20,002.5 damage. It's 20k a citadel. That's like IJN Shimakaze torpedoes or something. It's absolutely crazy. And even if we had access to Xarkun, New Jersey for the IJN battleship line, even if that were the case, every buff that Azerlane, New Jersey gives, and a lot of the commander buffs in this game are percentage based. So when you start with a base damage of 15,750 compared to 14,800 on the Yamato, when you start with a higher number and you add percentage-based buffs to it, well, there's really no way for the lower number to catch up. So Ohio has the hardest hitting guns in the game, no matter what way you spin it. And you can see, if you look down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, that we are using the Epic Artillery Plotting Room mod, which already gives us an 11% buff to our dispersion, but every time we do 30,000 damage, we get another 2% added on top of that. And as such, I don't even feel like it's necessary to fully build into accuracy at all on the Ohio. Not that I do that in any of my Battleship builds. My inspirations on Azerlane, New Jersey are Condo for the extra concealment. We've got our detectability down to 13 kilometers by sea, which I think is significant. The lower your detectability, the closer you can push into the enemy team without being spotted, barring the presence of the fun police, of course. And, of course, you can also turn around and kite away if things get too hot and heavy and drop spot much quicker than you could if you didn't buff into concealment. And then there are things like the spotting mechanics and the way you can utilize those to know the location of an enemy destroyer. It's much easier to pinpoint the location of an enemy destroyer when your concealment is at 13 kilometers than when it's at 15. It's a much smaller real estate on the map for the destroyer to be occupying in order to have spotted you. So, yeah, the Ohio may very well be the best battleship in the game. I don't know. That's a question that I'd like to see all of you answer in the comments section. But there is one more thing to consider with the Ohio, is while we have it built for full guns in this game, and you can see the rewards for that, we're up to 224,000 damage done, and in fact, I believe this is my personal damage record in the Ohio. We're going to get a little bit more before it ends, but we find ourselves facing off against a Colombo, a Daring, and another battleship, and we are in fact in a crossfire between the Colombo. The other enemy battleship had gone out to sort of the northeastern corner of the map. You can see his last known location grayed out up near that area. Well, he's headed toward our base, and he's going to have access to our broadside once he gets into range. So we really have, unfortunately, no hope of winning this match. There's the battleship now, and he's going to spell our demise. I think we could have 1v1 the Colombo and come out on top if we didn't have to worry about that battleship shooting our broadside. And the Daring is playing rather fast and loose. He might have been spotted long enough that we could have killed him too and won this game, but as it stands, we are going to lose. I was trying to avoid the ram here and get the drive-by, but it's just not going to happen. So we're going to end the game with like 250,000 damage done, the vast majority of that coming from USS Ohio's fantastic guns. And I think these guns, primarily, are what make it the best battleship in the game. But you can build it for secondaries if you want to as well, so it's viable in that sense. And then it's got the gimmick of the fast reloading heals, which you can spec into with Master Mechanic. So it's also a versatile ship in terms of the builds that you can employ. It's a great ship, in fact. Maybe it's the best battleship in the game. I don't know, you tell me. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.